Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into the secret language of images, a language of waves and frequencies that powers pretty much everything from your phone's camera to advanced medical scans.
So let's kick things off with a little puzzle. On the left, you've got this super detailed image of a circuit. And on the right, a blurry, kind of washed out version of the same thing. Now here's the crazy part. They both contain the exact same fundamental information. All those sharp details are still in the blurry image. They're just hiding.
So, the million-dollar question is, how do you actually program a computer to fix this? I mean, what do you even type? You can't just tell it to, make it less blurry. There has to be a more scientific way to do it.
To get that answer, we first need to learn to see images in a completely new way, not as a grid of pixels, but as a symphony of waves.
Our story actually starts way back in the early 1800s. We're going to meet a French mathematician who had an idea so profound it would take decades for the rest of the world to really catch on.
This is Joseph Fourier. Now, back in 1822, he was studying the flow of heat, of all things. And he published this paper that at first kind of went unnoticed. But buried inside was a revolutionary concept that would become one of the most important tools in all of modern engineering.
So the key takeaway is this. Fourier figured out that any complex, repeating signal, it doesn't matter how jagged or wild it looks, can be built by simply adding together a bunch of simple, smooth waves.
You know what? Let's just build one from scratch to see how it works. We're going to start with our base ingredient. One simple, low-frequency wave. Just a nice, gentle curve. Okay, now let's add another wave right on top of it. This one's a little faster, a higher frequency. And when they combine, you can already see a more interesting shape starting to form.
And we can just keep on going, right? We can add waves with higher and even higher frequencies. Every new wave we add brings another layer of complexity and detail into the mix.
And when you add them all up, you get this, a complex, jagged signal that's built from nothing more than those simple, smooth parts. This right here is Fourier's big idea in action. Complex patterns are really just a sum of simple frequencies.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. That same principle that works for a 1D wave, it also works for a 2D image. An image can also be broken down into a set of simple waves, just flowing in different directions.
The mathematical tool that lets us do this is called the Fourier Transform. Think of it like a prism for images, but instead of splitting light into a rainbow of colors, it splits an image into a whole spectrum of frequencies.
And here it is in action. We start with our circuit image. This is what we call the spatial domain. We run it through the Fourier transform, and we get this kind of starburst pattern. That's its frequency spectrum. This is the image's hidden recipe, its DNA of waves.
So what are we even looking at here? Well, think of this spectrum like a graphic equalizer for your stereo. The bright spots in the center, those are the low frequencies, the base of the image. They represent the broad, smooth areas, the overall structure. And the points farther out, that's the treble. That's all the fine details, the sharp edges, and all the textures.
Okay, and this is where the magic really happens. Because if we can break an image down into its individual frequency parts, that means we can also mess with them. We can turn some up, turn others down, or just get rid of them completely.
And the whole process is a pretty simple three-step recipe. First, you take your image and use the Fourier transform to flip it into the frequency domain. Second, you apply a filter, which is just a fancy mask that changes those frequencies. And third, you use the inverse Fourier transform to bring it all back into a new, totally transformed image.
So let's bring this all back to our original problem. How can we use all this frequency filtering stuff to fix that blurry photo?
Well, first, let's understand what blur even is in this frequency world. Blur is just the absence of high-frequency detail. That's it. So to create it, we apply a low-pass filter. This filter keeps all the low-frequency bass in the center, but just chops out all the high-frequency treble at the edges. Transform that back, and you get our blurry image.
Now, to sharpen an image, we do the exact opposite. We use a high-pass filter. This one blocks the blurry, low-frequency information and only lets the high-frequency details pass through. The result? An image that's basically made of only its sharpest edges and textures.
And just like that, we've solved our puzzle. Removing blur from an image isn't magic. It's just a matter of figuring out which high frequencies were weakened and then amplifying them back up. We've just uncovered the core principle behind the sharpen tool in pretty much every photo editor out there.
Thinking about images this way, as a collection of frequencies, really opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It makes you wonder, right? If we can see the hidden music inside a photograph, what other invisible patterns are just waiting out there to be revealed, if only we look at the world in a different frequency?